Have you ever stopped to wonder why some days you feel like you could eat everything in sight, and other days you're just not that hungry? We often chalk it up to willpower, right? Like it's a simple choice we make. But what if I told you it's not really a choice at all? That deep inside your body, there's this hidden brain, this incredibly sophisticated system that's constantly pulling the strings, controlling your hunger behind the scenes. So let's get into it and explore this amazing hidden world.
So, let's just start with the big one. The question that kind of flips everything we think we know on its head. Is your appetite really under your conscious control? I mean, the story we always hear is about discipline and self-control. But the science? Well, the science points to something way deeper. A powerful biological program that's running 24/7.
Okay, so at the very core of this whole system is a concept called energy homeostasis. The easiest way to think about it is like a perfectly balanced scale. On one side, you've got your energy intake, that's the food you eat, and on the other side, you've got your energy expenditure. That's every single thing your body does, from breathing to thinking to running a marathon. Your body is hardwired, biologically programmed, to keep this scale perfectly level. And appetite, that's the main tool it uses to do it.
So, how in the world does your body pull off this incredible balancing act? It's not just guessing. It has to have a way to measure the energy it's got stored up and then send very specific instructions to the brain to either ramp up your hunger or turn it down. It's a super precise feedback loop.
All right, now get ready for the first big surprise. The main sensor in this entire system is your fat tissue. Yeah, seriously, we're all used to thinking of fat, or adipose tissue, technically, as just this passive blob that stores extra calories. But that's not the whole story. In reality, it's an incredibly active, super intelligent organ that's constantly talking to your brain.
And here's how it works. Your fat tissue is constantly secreting these powerful signaling molecules, these hormones called adipokines. Think of them like little text messages that travel through your bloodstream straight to your brain. And the message they carry is a constant status update on how much energy you have in the bank. So the more fat you have, the more messages get sent.
Now, of all those adipokines, there is one undisputed superstar, and its name is leptin. Leptin is the main signal for your long-term energy status. The amount of leptin in your blood is directly proportional to your total amount of body fat. It's basically your fat tissue's way of shouting up to your brain, hey, we're good down here. We've got plenty of fuel in the tank, so you can ease up on the hunger signals.
So, the signal gets sent, but where does it go? Well, welcome to Mission Control. We're talking about a tiny region deep in your brain called the hypothalamus. This little spot is the central command center for all things appetite. It's where all these different signals come together so your brain can make the final call. Are we hungry or are we full?
And what's wild is just how much data the hypothalamus is crunching at any given moment. It's taking in these humoral signals. That just means hormones floating in your blood, like our friend leptin. It's also getting direct nerve signals from your gut. And inside, it has separate centers for feeling full, that's satiety, and for driving you to eat. But the most important thing to know is that the first stop for all this information is a very specific spot called the arcuate nucleus, or the ARC.
The ARC is really special. Because of its unique location, it has this privileged front-row seat to your bloodstream. This allows it to directly sample and, read the levels of hormones like leptin as they float by. It's the brain's frontline sensor, getting a live, real-time report on exactly what your body's energy status is, minute by minute.
Okay, let's zoom in even closer now. Right inside that ARC, there's this beautiful, elegant on-off switch for appetite. It's made up of two totally distinct sets of neurons that work in opposition to each other. This is literally where the decision to feel hungry or full gets made.
I want you to picture a biological tug of war. On one side, you have the gas pedal. These are your orexigenic neurons, and they scream eat by releasing powerful chemicals like NPY and AGRP. Then on the other side, you have the brake pedal. These are the anorexigenic neurons, and they tell you to stop eating by releasing signals from POMC and CART. And leptin? Leptin is basically the foot that controls these pedals. It pushes the brake and takes its foot off the gas, tipping the whole balance towards feeling full.
So how does this actually work? Well, it all comes down to something called the melanocortin pathway. So those brake pedal neurons, the POMC ones, they release a signal. That signal then goes and activates a specific receptor called MC4R. And when that receptor gets activated, that's the final step that actually shuts down your appetite. Meanwhile, AGRP, the signal from the gas pedal neurons, does something really clever. It acts like a shield, physically blocking that MC4R receptor so it can't be activated. That's how it keeps the hunger signal on full blast.
Now, I know this all sounds like a really neat theory, but how do we know it's actually true? Well, the proof, as they say, is written in our DNA. The study of genetics has given us just undeniable evidence that this entire appetite control system is a real, hardwired, biological program.
Get a load of this number. Twin studies, which are incredible for separating out what's genetic versus what's environment, estimate that somewhere between 40 and 70% of the differences in fat mass between people is inherited. That is a huge genetic influence. To put it in perspective, that's right up there with the heritability for height.
The first huge breakthrough actually came from animals. Scientists found this one particular mouse, they called it the OB/OB mouse, that had a single genetic typo that made it completely unable to produce leptin. And without that crucial "I'm full" signal, the mouse had this relentless, uncontrollable hunger, a condition called hyperphagia, and it became severely obese. This was the smoking gun. It proved that leptin was absolutely critical.
And then, incredibly, this discovery had a direct link to humans. Researchers found a very small number of people who had the exact same problem, a single genetic mutation that stopped them from making leptin. From the time they were little kids, they felt this insatiable hunger and gained weight incredibly fast. But then, when they were treated with simple injections of leptin, the results were, well, nothing short of a miracle. Their appetite normalized almost overnight, and they lost a huge amount of weight. It's just one of the clearest examples in all of medicine of what happens when you fix a broken biological circuit.
And it's not just about leptin. Remember that final receptor, the MC4R we talked about? Well, it turns out that mutations in the gene that makes MC4R are the single most common cause of severe single-gene obesity in human beings. This just confirms that the entire melanocortin pathway is absolutely essential for keeping our body weight regulated.
Now, while leptin is definitely the star of the long-term show, it doesn't work alone. It's more like the conductor of a much larger orchestra of hormones that regulate our appetite on all different kinds of timescales. So let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture to see how all these pieces fit together.
What's so fascinating here is how many of these signals are coming directly from your digestive system. While leptin gives that long-term report on your fat stores, these guys provide the short-term, meal-to-meal feedback. So ghrelin, which comes from an empty stomach, is the main one that screams, "I'm hungry." But as soon as you eat, your pancreas releases insulin, and your gut unleashes a whole flood of other hormones like GLP-1, peptide YY, and CCK. And what do they all do? They all send a signal to the brain saying, "Okay, food's on board, time to stop eating."
So when you put all of this together, the scientific conclusion is just crystal clear. As this quote says, obesity arises when these complex biological regulatory systems fail. It's not a failure of willpower. It's not a moral failing or a lack of character. It is the dysregulation of one of the most fundamental biological systems we have.
And that, of course, leaves us with a final, really important question. Knowing everything we now know, that appetite is governed by this complex, powerful, and genetically programmed biological system, how should we rethink our entire approach to weight, health, and metabolism? I mean, as individuals, as doctors, as a society, what does this change about how we treat people, and maybe even how we understand our own bodies? It's definitely something to think about.